If you're familiar with basic chess tactics, but you struggle to cross 1,000 ELO mark in chess, most likely it's for a simple reason, my friend. You do not know how to plan. Planning, a lot of people think, is like astrophysics, complex, detailed, and only for grandmasters. But let me tell you, that could not be farther away from truth. I'm International Master Zura Jawahadze, and I do want to take this moment to welcome you to my channel where I cut through complexity and help you improve your chess. Forget spending hours of calculating deep lines. A mini plan is a simple 1 to 3 move sequence designed to achieve a single small goal and is probably the most powerful concept for players in the range of 1,000, and I would say even 1,000 to 1,500. Let's dive in and simplify your entire chess mindset in regards to planning. Goal of this lesson is to form the basic strategic skills. Playing a good game of chess requires a lot more than just making moves. It requires us to have a goal in mind, intent behind each move. Therefore, we want to devise a plan or a strategy. However, before such a plan can be executed, we must have a clear picture of few aspects. Number one, the goal of the action. What are we trying to accomplish? Number two, the means of the action. How are we going to accomplish? Number three, the time required for it. If we're trying to, let's say, get our knight to g8, but our knight at the moment is on b1 and there are 1,000 pieces on the way, that is not going to be very practical, is it? And number four, the counter action of the opponent. You have a mini plan of attacking on the queen side, let's say, but opponent is threatening a checkmate in one move on the king side. Again, that is not going to be very smart. Next, we're going to talk about executing a plan, which seems like a complex issue for now, but we'll introduce this thing called scaled down versions of plan. In these scaled down plans, the goal of the action will be directly visible in the form of improving one's position, and the means are also going to be straightforward. We'll discuss a number of examples of scaled down plan, and we'll refer to these scaled down plans as mini plans. Mastering these mini plans is the first step towards good positional play. When we talk about strategy, the terms activity and vulnerability come in mind, and it's important to understand what they are. Activity, obviously, is you directing course of the game. Vulnerability is the weakness, yours or your opponent's vulnerability. So a good strategy is characterized by increasing your activity and the activity of your pieces, removing your vulnerabilities, and doing the opposite for the opponent, increasing or neutralizing their activity and increasing their vulnerability. Let's see the concrete example. We're playing with black here, and let us consider the position where black has a double pawn. Can we make a mini plan of getting rid of the pawn weaknesses here, the weak pawns? Well, how? We can play knight to b5, attack the rook and the knight at the same time. Knight will be forced to capture it because otherwise they're going to lose one of the pieces. So knight captures back and we will take back with the pawn. Therefore, we got rid of our weakness. We undoubled our pawns. So that is the successful mini plan. Next position we're going to talk about, we are playing with white, and it is white to move. Black is attacking our d4 pawn. What do we do about it? First, let's talk about the two pawns that control the center and 4 squares at the moment. My bet is that first thing you thought about was pushing this pawn, attacking the knight, because playing a move while you are attacking the opponent's piece is called a tempo. We win a tempo here, therefore it should be a good thing, right? Wrong, because this is going to severely weaken our pawn structure. Now, these pawns are fixed in the center. This knight is going to move to e5, and we will never be able to get rid of this knight from e5. That was the one element. Another important element why this is a bad move is because we are fixing our own pawns on the same color of our bishop. We want to do the opposite. Actually, if we have a light square bishop, we want our pawns on the dark squares, so bishop can move freely through them, not the other way around. Now, if your bishop is stuck inside your own pawn chain, it is passing. It's a bad bishop. So d5 would be a strategical mistake. Therefore, what other choices do we have? We can defend this pawn by moving king up and maintaining the pawn mobility. Next example is going to be the similar, where again the d4 pawn is attacked with black pieces. We're playing with white. What are we going to do about it? Well, first you may think, isn't the other pawn also hanging? Yes, it is. Do we want to take it? Not really, because now we have ruined our pawn structure. We have isolated two of them, and not to mention the fact that this rook is simply going to capture it on the next move, that pawn back. So we're going to lose that pawn anyways, and we have ruined our pawn structure. Therefore, capturing the pawn is definitely not a good idea. Should we push the pawn? That could be an option here. But what about defending the pawn? Should we defend with a rook or should we defend with the king? What do you think? Well, bringing the rook on d1 is not a bad move, but let's talk about a thing called delegating tasks between your pieces. You want to delegate tasks between your pieces so you can improve the efficiency of them. You do not want 3 of your pieces or 2 of your pieces doing the same thing if one can accomplish the task, right? Therefore, defending this pawn with the king and then moving away or keeping the rook for other active operations would make a lot more sense, because now we can go rook b1, attack this pawn. If pawns get traded, we can go to c1, potentially use the c file for our activity. So remember this, cooperation between your pieces is huge. That is how you truly get better, when you understand the efficiency of well cooperated pieces. Next, we're going to see an opening example and how it is important to have a plan in mind when playing moves. Moves should be aimed at improving your own position or at weakening your opponents. Now, white is going to play bishop to e3 here. You may be thinking, well, does that not allow doubling up our pawns? Why would we double our pawns? Well, double pawns are a special weakness when they stand alone, but with the other pawn next to them, it can actually be source of strength. And that is the case right now. White very firmly controls the center here. This pawn is going to cover the d4 square, so not going to allow the knight to come in. It's also going to control the f4 square. But more importantly than that, white has opened up the f file for the rook. So now f file can be source of activity. We can start some active operations on the f file by moving the knight away, immediately also targeting this pawn on f7. Another thing we could do is bringing the queen on the king side. Therefore, capturing the bishop on e3 is definitely in white's favor. A lot of times, actually, black moves the bishop back here to not give white all those advantages. Next, we're going to see an example where black had just captured our knight. You may be thinking, well, obviously we gotta take back with the queen. Why would we take with the pawn, right? That would weaken our king and double our pawns, expose it. Well, yes, we do want to take with the queen, but let's take a look at all active moves. Do we have an in-between move? Yes, we do. We can take the knight with the check, force the pawn to take back, and then we are going to take the bishop back. Afterwards, we can follow up with knight a4. Now we have doubled these pawns on the c file. c6 pawn is the backwards pawn, so it's very weak. And potentially we can move the knight away, then play c4, rook c1, and increase our pressure over the c file even more. Therefore, capturing on c6 first before taking the bishop was a big win for white. Now let's talk about the real game example here. We are playing with black, and first let's start by counting the material. We have a rook and 4 pawns versus white's knight. And how many pawns is that? 6 pawns. What is the material imbalance, knight and 2 pawns versus a rook? You're probably familiar with the value of the pieces. We know knight is 3, pawns 2, so 5 points of material versus also rook, that is 5 points of material. So it's not so clear who is better, but in end games, especially when there are pawns on 2 sides of the board, rook can be a lot more flexible than the knight. If it was a bishop, that might be a little bit different of a story, but in these concrete examples, we have rook versus a knight. So black is trying to push this for the advantage, for the win. How are we going to do that? We want to activate our rook. The only way we can win this would be by activating the rook. What do we mean by activating the rook? We want that rook to have targets, attack some of the opponent's pawns. Namely, which pawns do we want to attack? Obviously, we would not want to attack this pawn because king is right there, so king is defending it. Well, what about the queenside pawn? So we want to go for the queenside pawns. How are we going to do that? You may be thinking, well, we go rook e8 to go then rook e2 and take most important pawn, which is the b2 base of these pawns. Well, if you go rook e8, which is the natural move here, white is going to play king f1 to defend it. Then what? Right? We're not able to infiltrate still. What about rook c4, you may be thinking? Attacking the knight. Well, knight moves away, then goes back to e3 or d4, and again, we are not infiltrating into the white's position. That leads us to the third option, which is going to be, can we sacrifice a pawn to activate our rook? And the answer to that would be, yes, we can. Pawn to d4. We're going to give this pawn up, and when they take it back, we're going to invade with our rook, either immediately or check first, and then invade on c2. Now b2 pawn is in trouble, and once we win that pawn, our 2 pawns on the queen side are going to be a lot faster than the white pawns. Plus, our king is a lot closer, so we can simply use the help of the king. Here, you gotta be careful not to allow that, because after d7, king could not go to e7. Obviously, it's never too late to blunder, as I like to say. The opening position, again, where bishop has already been developed to g5. Now, moving it back, bishop goes to b6. That probably would not give us much. So white would play the simple and natural developing move here, knight to c3, with the aim of going to d5 and then trading on f6, which would weaken black king's position by a lot. Then we could go bishop h6. This is a very standard operation to weaken an opponent's king on the king side. Now, similar situation here, we are playing with black. We have traded our bishop, as you can guess, on e6, and white has captured it. First, we would start, what do you think? Who is better here? And if we evaluate the position here, we both have queens, 2 rooks, and 2 minor pieces. However, this dark square bishop is definitely a stronger piece, like a sniper from the corner. They're waiting for its prey. Now, finding the exact correct move here may present a little bit of a challenge, but let's try to improve our position even more. How would we improve our position here? By opening up the rook on the f file. We would start thinking which pieces are not fully involved into the game. Those are the rooks. Do we have any open files? Can we include those rooks into the game? Yes, we do have a semi-open file because white has a pawn there. So it's not fully open, but still a semi-open file is better than the closed file. So if we were to move the knight away, now this would create an immediate threat on the knight on f3 because the king is pinned. There is the second threat, which is a little harder to notice. Due to this pin, we could also go knight to g3, winning in exchange because right now queen traps its own rook. So knight h5 here would be a simple but a powerful move. The only move for white to get rid of both threats would be moving the king away, but then we can jump our knight to f4, threatening the mate on g2. Our position has improved since the knight on f4 controls more squares on the opponent's side of the board. So white already is in a very difficult situation. For example, if you move the pawn, now we can take on h3, then take on f3, and the king side is falling apart. Now, to sum all this up, I am going to read through some of the bullet points that hopefully will stick. So the objective of the mini plan is to teach us to think more effectively during the games. Therefore, here is the summary of this mini plans and what we are trying to accomplish and what we have discussed so far. Improving your pawn structure, weakening your opponent's pawn structure, improving the position of your pieces, and increasing the weaknesses of your opponent's pieces, ensuring a proper division of labor between your pieces. That's when we talked about the cooperation and coordination of our pieces, creating attacking chances. And some other mini plans that can be taken into account include exchanging well-placed piece of your opponent, neutralizing your opponent's attacking chances, establishing a good piece coordination or cooperation, and weakening the position of your opponent's piece. Now, I will leave you with some exercises where your goal is to weaken opponent's pawn structure. That's a mini plan. Have fun with it. Add them to your library. And all of this is part of structured lessons on my community group at school. I would highly encourage you joining other individuals and chess enthusiasts that also try to get better or simply have fun with the fun people and fun community. I hope to see you inside. Do consider subscribing to the channel and leaving your feedback. It would help me and other people so they can see this instructive lessons and get better. Let's go.